This is all of our boot accessories that we've slowly developed over the last 4 years as we've done more and more boot reviews and realized how many things are missing in the market. So be sure to check out all these below. They make great gifts, self-gifts, and it's a huge way that you can help support the channel. So check them out below. It's finally time. You guys have been hounding me and Gareth from Jim Green non-stop to get this boot on the channel because we just finished the Moccasin Mocktober series where we took all the true traditional moc-toe boots that are made in the United States because that's where this kind of boot was really founded over the last like 500 years. And so we focused on the Moccasin brands with one extra who are not very appreciative of us adding them into the series and the couple jokes being close enough to the US or American. I thought it was funny, Canada. So this time we're giving Jim Green the shot because there is a rich history of moccasin boots being used in South Africa, especially with all the hunting, the safaris, all the rangers and gamekeepers. And a lot of the boots that these other brands that we reviewed, they sell boots for safaris, for going to Africa. And so when a brand from Africa makes this style of boot in Africa for the intended purpose that a lot of people are buying them from the US to go to Africa for, you can see why people are really curious to see what's inside this boot. So we bought a pair to cut in half, run through all of our tests to really figure out, is this a true moccasin boot? Is this moc-toe real or is it fake? Does it actually wrap underneath your foot? Is it worth the price? Is it just a regular Jim Green boot but in disguise? Or is this actually a true moccasin boot where you get all the value and features that people love about moccasin boots? And it's under 300 bucks. So this could be up there with the best value true moccasin boots that money can buy. So first, what is this boot? Well, the brand is Jim Green. The style is the Meander. We have this one in the Bronco leather. And the reason we're doing the Bronco leather is because we just re-released the Troopers, the barefoot African Trooper and the rugged African Trooper with the big toe cap on there, also in Bronco leather. So it's just a good opportunity to let you guys know those dropped. Those are available, limited quantities, and it's the exact same leather as this. Even though it looks a little different, you can see the pull-up kind of looks different. So I'm wondering if it's just a difference in the hides or maybe the different manufacturing processes. But either way, we'll go over this leather because it is sick. They weigh this much and they retail for $279, but they also have these other options that you can see anywhere from like $285 for the barefoot version. You can see it's a slightly different pattern with the workhorse, and even got some on sale for $214 and up to $279. They're made in South Africa, and the way they position this product is the Meander moc-toe rightfully gets its name from a local area where we are based in South Africa, the Midlands Meander. Well known for its rolling hills, green meadows, and chilly winters, the Midlands of South Africa brings a sense of calm to anyone that passes through. The area offers great trout fishing, hiking, and bird shooting, which brings a sense of adventure. And with that, one needs a boot to go with it that will not only do the job, but also stand out for evening drink at the pub. Built for weekend wanderers and those who value both style and durability, the Meander offers the perfect balance between a rugged construction and the genuine moc-toe comfort. Whether you're headed to the office or meandering through some fields, this boot is designed to move with you, delivering the quality Jim Green is known for in a refined everyday silhouette. So if you do want a pair of these, check them out. Be linked in my description. And don't forget, the Bronco Troopers just released, so check all these out below. So now, let's get to the leather. This leather is really unique. You know, like I said, this particular pair I got is slightly different looking than the regular Bronco that I have. But either way, this leather is about 2.3 to 2.5 millimeters thick, has tons of conditioning waxes literally pressed into it and heat pressed into it. That's why when you bend this leather, you get what's called pull-up, which is this effect of the leather lightening when you squeeze it like that. Look at that, isn't that cool? And because of that oil and wax content, it's a really self-conditioning leather, so you don't have to condition it near as much. It's gonna be really durable, and all that wax and conditioner makes this a water-resistant leather. But you can see in a moc-toe, because this is a fairly firm leather, you can see how that moc-toe stitch gets really puckery through here. And that's why some of these other brands like Russell's use a really soft, supple leather that has a good amount of stretch. That's not super waxy because you get these harder break points, as you can see right there. And the Russell's, you don't see that at all. And that's not just Russell's, it's across the board with moc-toes. They usually do a really good job of hiding that puckering. But does that actually affect the boot in a functional way? I don't think so. I think for the most part, it's all aesthetic. You know, you could say, well, maybe there's an extra pressure on these really tight folded joints right here that might cause it to split prematurely. But for the most part, I think it's a symptom of them trying to make a very affordable moc-toe boot with different techniques that we'll go over in a bit in the construction that makes this boot different and why you get all this puckering. But I think a lot of it comes down to they're trying to make it an affordable boot under 300 bucks while still being a true moccasin. Then if we look at the inside, this is usually where you can start telling if it's a true moccasin construction because there's a few things that we're gonna be looking for in this boot that we judge all these other moccasins through that lens, which is what kind of moc-toe stitch. Is it a true moc-toe stitch? Is it an overlap stitch? A lot to do with the moc-toe, but especially does it wrap all the way underneath? Is there any voids? How do they actually do the wrapping underneath? How do they seal this back area? And is there anything that's faked on the shoe? So if we look down on the inside, you can see it's lined with the typical Jim Green lining. It's about 1 millimeter thick, but you can see from the insole, it's really wide. It's a very generous last. I think it's a different last. They call it the MT last, but I assume it's for moc-toes, so they probably had to adjust some things, some heights and stuff, but for the most part, it's shaped a lot like regular Jim Green. So you get that extra width, but the important part, what is underneath? Well, if you look down in there, you can see there is, I think that's a leather tuck. So that tuck is that supportive layer underneath the insole that when all these layers come together around the heel, they need something to lay over top of it, not just to support your foot and any shank underneath it, but also to cover those inconsistencies. For example, right here on these Gokeys, you can see this tuck right there covers up the shank, covers up this gap caused by that relief where they bring all that leather together so you keep it seamless at the toe, and all that is covered and supported with this tuck. In the Gokeys, this is just a fiberboard tuck. So what is in the Jim Greens? It's actually leather, veg-tan leather, for once. And you can see it even has an internal heel counter, which I love. And so that also tells me that it's probably built a little bit more like the Gokeys than it is a true traditional mock where they have that little seam at the back. And then up through the forefoot, is it seamless? Is there anything going on the inside? Well, I can feel there's a Blake stitch on the inside. And so that Blake stitch sews through the lining and the upper leather if it does actually tuck underneath. I don't know for sure. And that's why we have to cut them in half, because you literally can't see if this layer tucks all the way underneath unless you literally cut it in half. And I also see a little bit of that seam that goes pretty far forward in the forefoot. That little seam that you see right there on the Russells that stops where this pad begins and doesn't creep up to the forefoot. By the Jim Greens, I can see that seam sneaks up a little bit further, almost all the way to the toe, probably like an inch from the toe. So that's why they put this insole in there, is to cover that in a similar way that the tuck covers some inconsistencies. You can still run them without an insole, but you'll be standing a little bit on that thread. But I can't really see how that lining is tied into the boot, because you can see on the Russells it's seamless. There's no actual tie-in to this upper overlap stitch. It's completely seamless, so you have that separation of this more water-resistant lining from the inherent flaws of having holes poked in the upper of the boot. So we'll see when we get it cut in half how that's structured, if it's more structured like the easy mocks where it stops, or if it's wrapped all the way up, or if it's tied in, and that's why this big stitch is so big. And so that kind of brings us to that most important part, which is the moc-toe stitch. So now we know that it is a true moccasin construction. We don't know for sure if this upper wraps all the way underneath, but we know it is a moccasin. We know that it clearly has a moc-toe stitch, but what kind of moc-toe stitch is it? Well, it's very similar to the Russells, where this is an overlap stitch. And Russell patented this in, I think, the 40s. And obviously patents expire, but even some of these other brands like Gokey, like Rancourt, they don't do the overlap stitch. They just do a traditional stitch. And so with the Jim Greens, you can see it's almost exactly the same as the overlap stitch on the Russells, but it's really wide. See how much wider that is? That's why I'm wondering if the lining is tucked up into this overlap stitch, and that's why it's so chunky. And if that's how they're trying to seal this boot from the environments, from water getting in, from dirt getting in. So if we take a closer look at this moc-toe stitch, is it hand sewn? Well, if you look right there, I see 2 threads going through, so that means they're not linking together, they're passing each other. So it is at least a saddle sewing technique. And if I look right here at the threads on the edge there, that to me looks like it's hand sewn. So I think it's hand sewn, but is it hand punched, or does it have the big pre-punch holes where it removes a big chunk of leather where a lot of water and junk can get in? And that's another notable difference between the Russells that are more than twice the price of the Jim Greens, is if I try to pull this little overlap stitch away, I almost can't even see on the inside because it's done so tightly. And I don't see any holes where they're pre-punched, because these are punched with an awl. Versus the Jim Greens, if I pull this away, I can see those threads a lot easier, so it's not nearly as tightly sewn. And or it might be because they're pre-punched, but I honestly can't tell. It looks like, I think they're pre-punched, because the stitches are super consistent. There is a little bit of a gap, and so I'm guessing it's pre-punched, but we'll see when we actually get it cut in half. Really, the last little bits we haven't covered is the outsole and midsole. So it looks like it's got that full-length veg-tan midsole with the rubber slip sole underneath, so that rubber outsole adheres better to that rubber slip sole. And this is not the only sole you can get this on. There's a bunch of different sole options that you can get with the barefoot, with the wedge sole. And so it looks like it's built almost exactly the same as these more hunting style moccasin boots. That's why I would compare it to the Russells and to the Gokeys, because that's really its closest competition. You know, all 3 of these are more outdoor ready boots. They're made to handle the environments. They're made to be more rugged, more resilient. And so that's why they're built very similarly from the sole down, with that veg-tan midsole, that slip sole, and the outsole. So now let's cut these in half, see if it is a true moccasin. Is it pre-punched? Does it wrap all the way underneath? Is it true double layer underneath your foot? And we'll see if we can figure out why this puckers so bad and how that lining is tied into it. And ultimately, are they worth the price? So now let's cut them in half. Look at all these kilties. You know, we originally started selling our kilties in limited sizes and our 4 or 5 standard leathers, but they're so popular and people are always asking us for more specialty leathers that other brands use, like some Red Wing leathers, some Shrunken Bison leathers, some whites and Thorogood leathers, and Blood Core. And then all these new kilty leathers also come in our coasters, and these have been really popular. The Shrunken Bison, like this black Shrunken Bison, the tobacco Shrunken Bison, and the chocolate, because look how thick they are, you know, and they just have a really cool texture. They're just really tactile feeling, you know, they just kind of have a nice feel to them. And they come in all of our different sizes, our fringe kilties and our no-show kilties from 6-inch all the way up to 10-inch, and even some cordovan no-show kilties. So check them out below, protect your investment. Kilties are made to help protect your tongue from wearing out, prevent stuff getting inside your boot, take a little bit of space up if you got a case of the lads. So check them out below. Okay, we got them cut in half. We also got some of the troopers with the Barefoot Trooper and the Rugged Trooper, just so you can see the difference between how Jim Green regularly does their boots versus a true moccasin construction, if it's true. So now, let's see what's inside. Okay, so let's look at the lining first. So how do they tie in this lining? That is actually, I've never seen that before. Look at how those stitches go in there. I actually don't know how that's stitched, because you can see it kind of zigzags through instead of, if you compare it to the Gokeys, where it's a blind stitch. You don't even see stitches through there. So how do they do this? What is that? Is it sewn twice? I honestly have no idea. Let's see if we can unstitch a little bit. But one thing you can see for sure is that the lining is tied into this moc-toe construction. You can also tell it's true moccasin construction with that real overlap stitch. And the reason it's so bulky is, I think, just that the lining is tied into it. And I think part of it's because they use a full thickness leather through that overlap and that vamp piece. But I don't know how this is sewn. Maybe it's sewn twice in a row? I'll just start unraveling. We'll see what's what. Okay. Okay. Oh, you know what? I think what it is that because there's so much material and it's so bulky, because both this upper lining and the lower lining is tied into it, you don't actually get that full encapsulation of that overlap stitch. Because if this was tightened down all the way and that overlap was fully around the stitches, you wouldn't see that zigzag. It's just that there's so much bulk, you can't tighten it down all the way until it's a point where you literally can't see the thread through there, right? Because you go through. I don't know, I actually have no idea. I don't know why it skips. Because if it's saddle sewn, you'd go 2 needles through the hole, through the same hole, pull it through the next hole, through the same hole. So you wouldn't have a zigzag. So then I have no idea. I'm gonna have to ask Gareth from Jim Green about that. I don't know at all. I don't know why they wouldn't just do a full saddle sew technique. Maybe it's more durable that way. Because it goes through, okay, so that thread goes through. Okay, final answer. I think it's a result of how thick this overlap stitch is. I think in order to get it to fully close up like you see in the Gokeys, all those layers together would be a lot wider and a lot taller. And so in order to get it to seal up really well and to get it to cinch down without having all the layers together, I think that's what they've had to do there. So it is a true moc-toe stitch, and you can see it is pre-punched, but it is a little bit different. It's not done quite as perfectly as the Russells are, because with the Russells fully encapsulate that, but they also don't tie in the lining. So it's an extra like 2 or 3 millimeters that Jim Green has to deal with. But because they can't cinch it down super tight, you're still susceptible to water getting to the inside, because you can see there's a couple holes. You can see daylight coming through. It's not tightened to where it's sealing itself. It still has open holes. So it's kind of like a half overlap stitch. It is overlap stitch in how it's made, but the true functionality of that overlap stitch is missing a little bit from it because of this way they've stitched it there. That was a pain to figure out. Should have thought that through before I sat down to record. But what about, is it a true moccasin construction? Does that moccasin run all the way underneath your foot? It looks like it does. You can see where that Blake stitch is that sews those 2 layers down through the midsole. And you can see, I'm pretty sure that that is a full thickness leather that's underneath of there. But the Jim Green glue is so freaking strong, I'm not gonna be able to get this apart. Yep, that's a full double layer. But what's underneath the tuck? If I pull this tuck away, that's glued in really well, a lot better than the Gokey's. Get this pried up to some degree anyway. You can see there's a gap right there. That's where these pieces come together to be sutured together. Like you can see that where that runs all the way to the length of the toe that's covered by that insole. Some of the brands, they suture it all the way through the heel, like in the Russells, where that's all the way at least to the heel. This one stops a little bit early and has that big gap. So is that a deal breaker for this boot? I don't think it is. I think we've seen plenty of them that have that gap there. I'm surprised they didn't put even a wedge of leather in there to kind of support that, or a shank, but I think that's probably why that gap is there. There's probably a shank in their other boot, to be honest with you. So I would just rather have them put something in there so it doesn't overly collapse underneath your foot, because moccasins already don't have a ton of arch support. And so with that gap in there, you're losing like a 1/4 inch of material through, like right through that middle part. And like I mentioned, you can really see how far that little stitch goes up the forefoot that you'll be standing on if you don't put the insole in there. And as for the heel counter, just a standard synthetic heel counter, but there's like 5 layers in here. You've got the internal counter cover, you've got the lining, you've got the heel counter, you've got the upper leather, and then you've also got the backstay. So that's 5 layers of material at your heel. So very hardy through the heel, even though it is a synthetic counter. And now I'm gonna cut this off so we can actually see what's going on underneath of there. My NAFs, I think this is the Lander 3 or Lander 4. There you go. Let's do it to both so you can really see what I was talking about. There we go. So there's your platform with the veg-tan leather, the rubber slip sole, and the outsole. And then the upper is Blake stitched down to that. You can see this Blake stitch right there. And then if I bring these 2 together, you can see that gap that I was talking about. That gap right there. See that sliver removed right there? So that's gotta be where they put a shank in the other boot. I just wish they put a little strip of leather in there just to support it a little bit more. But more importantly, you can see that it is truly a seamless sidewall and a true moccasin construction, because there's no other layers through here like you can see with the regular Jim Greens. People are like, well, what makes a moccasin so expensive and so unique and so different? Why does everyone love them? Because if you compare these two, you can see that midsole that is in the moccasin is basically the insole that you're standing on with the barefoot African trooper. And then comparing that to the rugged African trooper, same concept, but you have an additional layer of leather through the insole. And so basically from the leather midsole down, all 3 of these boots are close enough to the same. But for the barefoot, that's it. That's all you have underneath your foot to keep it lightweight, flexible. And so that's where you get all the effects of that seamless sidewall, where you don't have high pressure points or any hard lips or any edges that you see in even these boots, and while still being supported with that tuck right there. So then what are the issues with this boot that you need to consider before you buy a pair? If you're comparing it to like the upper echelon, really Russell does it the best in the world for these more hunting and hiking style mocks. We already talked about a few of them, like that stitch that runs down the forefoot is gonna irritate some people. It is technically lined, but you have that big gap there where all those layers can't be cinched down together, and so you do have an overlap stitch, but it doesn't have all the effects of an overlap stitch. The lining is also in the several different pieces, and you can see there's some issues here where that's rolling up. You see there's a gap there, and so it's really 1, 2, 3 different pieces through the lining versus just the one solid piece in a pair of Russells. Keep in mind, it's like Russells are like 3 times the price, but we're comparing it to the standard of quality, which is Russell. Another issue that's maybe not as functional, but it's definitely aesthetic, is all the puckering that you see in the Jim Greens that you don't usually see in these higher end mocks. And I think that's because it is a little bit more mass produced. It's not quite as handmade, and so the processes are a lot faster. I believe a machine lasts the upper instead of hand lasting it. And so you just don't have the same amount of precision and being able to guide the leather and work with the leather. And it's also just a standard leather for Jim Green, whereas Russell hand selects their leathers and has a very specific formula that still has plenty of stretch for the manufacturing and wear, but still being rigid enough and durable enough for 10 years of wear. So to me, it comes down to all those little differences added it up, because it does make a difference and an impact on the boot, and it will matter in functionality and for style. But for this specific boot, I think a lot of it comes down to the actual price, because if you're considering this boot, there's a good chance you're considering it for the price and not to be the ultimate moccasin boot. And so for $275 in that $270 to $290 range, is it worth the price? I think it is. I think if you compare it to any of the other moccasins that we reviewed, it has a lot of the same features, a lot of the benefits. It's a little more roughly done, and it's missing a couple elements here and there. But for the price, the foot skin was $230, and it was barely a moccasin. It's almost like a toy moccasin. And so for $50 more, you get a very true moccasin that has some issues here and there, that has some shortcomings and some issues that are gonna be inherent to a more affordable moccasin boot, but it still has that seamless sidewall, it's fully lined. And so in reality, it is a very good boot for the price. And it is a true moccasin through and through. But if we were to make a comparison to one boot that was the most similar, it'd be the Gokeys. But they're $440, and you don't get that rubber slip sole, you don't get the leather tuck. The moc-toe stitch is a lot more finely done. I think the leather's on par with each other, and you do get a lot more substance from the Jim Greens than you do from this particular pair of Gokeys. And so you can see for $100 less or $80 less, you can see why people are very excited about the Jim Greens. Because if you do that direct comparison, it is a very good quality. Obviously, it's not handmade in the United States, and you pay that little bit of a price difference because of that. But at the end of the day, you get a lot of what Gokey is for a lot cheaper price. And that's why people love these. So overall, I think Jim Green nailed it. I think this is a really good boot for the price. I think if you're looking for that moccasin style and you want that seamless sidewall, this is a really good affordable option that is more positioned towards work, a little more positioned towards the outdoors. It's a completely different category than like the Rancourts and these more high-end, like slimmer camp mocks or more casual mocks. But for this particular category, I think it performed really, really well. And it might be the best affordable hunting mock you can buy. Because what else is there for under $300 that's true moccasin construction? Maybe that's what we do next, is what is the best affordable moccasin? So let me know what you guys think would beat this. Let me know the issues you have with this, your experience in these. What do you wish they would change? Maybe I'm wrong about this stitch. Let me know your thoughts on that stitch, because I'm still honestly a little lost about it. So thank you guys for all your support. Check out the barefoot African Trooper, the rugged African Trooper. Now comes in the Bronco leather. It's limited quantities, and that's why I wanted to do this video, was instead of cutting these again, I wanted to give you guys what you wanted, which was to see this boot cut in half compared to the other moccasins. So thank you guys for your support through Mocktober and your support of Jim Green over the years. We've done like a bunch of collaborations with him, really helped him get into the barefoot world, helped bring him into the US. So I just always love working with Jim Green. I really enjoy working with Gareth just on a personal level. And so it's a really good company making really high quality stuff. And that's it. So thank you guys. See ya.